Hello friends, today we are doing another reading for the month, and this time I am doing a energetic reading through this reading instead of a mandala reading for this month. So hopefully you guys enjoy this different form of a reading, and I'm this time including some runes. I think I might have done something similar before, but this time I'm going through each of the reading or meanings of the runes that you may pick, and then I'm going to shuffle the cards for each group as you think about whatever it is you're thinking about in terms of your energy or messages you might need to receive. And like I always say, time is relative to the human mind, and so in the real concept of time, it doesn't necessarily exist. So you thinking of whatever question you have right in that moment that you are in, your question is finding me in this moment. So no questions, don't have any doubts about that. Just think of your question as we move through it, and we will hopefully answer it or find some clarity on that. So the first rune that we have here is, and let's see if I can focus it really quick for us. This first rune that we've got here is Wunjo or Wunho. I'm not amazing at these pronunciations. But the meaning of this one is comfort, pleasure, fellowship, harmony, ecstasy, possibility of going over the top. And the negative downside of this would be, or the reverse of this would be, sorrow, strife, alienation, and feelings of that nature. Also kind of reminds me of the Aquarius archetype, because Aquarius is often alienated, even though they seem, or many people are very like, oh, Aquarius community. But even though they are about the community, they very much are the black sheep of the zodiac in a lot of ways, or they just are alienated in a lot of ways, where they might want to connect with people and just have a hard time doing it, either because of a lack of open-mindedness on someone's behalf, or whatever the case might be. So, reminds me of the Aquarius archetype. The next one is Perthro. Not sure how to pronounce that one again, but here that is, Perthro. And this one is Lot of Cup, or vagina, or womb. Feminine mysteries, secrets, occult abilities, initiation. And the downside, or the reverse of this, would be addiction, stagnation, loneliness, and malaise. So that is this one. Powerful one for sure. And then this last one is Fehu. And this one has to do with wealth. And in older times, cattle, because people's cattle would be their wealth. Even people's children would be their wealth, depending on how many children you had to help you in the fields or with the cattle. This is something that I think is still kind of predominant in maybe Amish culture, where a lot of their livelihood might be within their cattle, but also within their family line. How many children do they have? How many children do they have on the fields helping them work their business? So, abundance, luck, energy, foresight, fertility, creation. And the reverse of this would be failure, greed, atrophy, discord, cowardice, stupidity, dullness, poverty, and bondage. So that might be something you all are working and flowing through. And again, even thinking of this in terms of your family. Even though it's not necessarily like the Amish concept or the old age concept perhaps of, your family line being your wealth, or, how many people you have in your family helping you out being your wealth, or even your cattle being your wealth, but maybe more so thinking in terms of your own generational wealth, generational well-being, how people have reacted to money in the past. I had a friend who was, her family didn't always have a whole lot, I suppose. That's at least how she would put it. And she would often tell me that she or her family members would, whenever they would get paid or get, some larger sum of money, I guess they're kind of, I don't want to say rule of thumb, but the thing that they always tended to do when they happened upon a large sum of money was spend it, because they didn't know the next time they would get it. And so, you know, they would just go on a huge shopping spree, buy a whole bunch of things that they couldn't buy before, etc., etc., which isn't always a bad thing. But in her case, and specifically in her family's case, they would often find themselves in this position where they spent all their money, and then they didn't have money for the things that they needed, such as food, essentials, you know, maybe rent and living situations and scenarios. So something to be mindful of too, how your family might have handled money in the past, what that perspective might have been like, and were they the type of people too, like, you know, they got money quickly and so they didn't know when they would have it again, and so they, you know, would spend it all? Or did you have a family that was so thrifty that they nickel and dimed everything, and you know, did something similar to the people on the Extreme Cheapskates show, where they well, I don't know, cut up little old cloths and rags to use as toilet paper, or reuse ketchup that was used on people's plates for dinner. You know, there are people out there. So maybe thinking of that, and even just kind of hashing that out in your own mind and being like, yeah, you know what, I didn't realize how frugal my mom was in ways, and how that might have rubbed off on me, and how even the things that I'm doing and practicing and the ways that I view money and etc. has been completely formed by this perception that she had, and this belief that she had that she didn't know when she would get more money, so might as well spend it now. Or, you know, feeling so thrifty and frugal that you want to save all of your ketchup off of the plates and all the spaghetti sauce just to make sure that you have enough. So, you know, exploring those waters within yourself and seeing what messages they might have for you, because I do feel like they might be important. So I think first I'm going to pull from this deck here, the Witch's Tarot deck, I believe is what it's called. Hopefully you guys can't hear me moving around too much. I'm trying to keep my microphone stable, because I'm not sure how well my microphone on my camera will work. So this is a test run, one of the first. I wanted to make sure I tried out this camera for you guys this month to see if the quality is better, and I'm working with it and working on it and learning about it. So hopefully also this video uploads quicker, because I literally last month and the months prior I had days where I would spend 3 days waiting on a video to finish uploading. So anyway, enough of me rambling. Alright, these cards here are for you, my first group. Set your rune up here. And you had cards fly out, and this card, interestingly enough, had flipped over when I initially was kind of pulling cards. So let's see how we can set this up here. I'll set it by the goddesses. So the first card you've got here is Six of Pentacles. Actually, we'll do it like this. That's kind of nice. Six of Pentacles. So I can tell that a lot of maybe what you're working through just personally has to do with what you're giving to others, how much you feel you have to give to others, etc. And maybe for some of you, your confidence might even kind of in ways be based off of how you help people. And this again kind of reminds me of this Aquarius archetype, because I guess you could say in modern astrology especially, and I'm going back to what this rune means really quick. Yeah, so when I think of Aquarius specifically, I think of this archetype or this idea that surrounds them, either in modern astrology, I think mostly modern astrology, but it's this idea that they feel most like themselves, or most like in their element, or they feel happy or joyful. It brings them joy to feel like they are assisting people and assisting humanity, to feel like they are providing a helping hand. And that's kind of what this image is reminding me of. This figure could be like an Aquarius, someone who is bringing gifts, bringing knowledge, bringing ideas to people who are willing to hear it. Because for Aquarius, maybe in the past, they have always had this kind of support system where people actually cared to listen to what they were saying. And so it just always kind of felt like they were a bit alienated. And so, but this to me instead feels more so like a kind of like a reciprocity, where someone is bringing ideas and knowledge and wealth and wisdom to the table, and it is being well received because people are willing to listen, people are willing to help themselves and help each other. It kind of reminds me of that idea or that concept, or what is it, phrase that people often say, like, you can't help someone that doesn't want to help themselves. And that's the vibe that this card is giving me. Like, finally these people are wanting to help themselves. Like, finally you're wanting to help your damn self. And I am happy to provide a shining light or a guide for you in that process, or I'm happy to provide a gift for you to help you embark on that process. Kind of reminds me of someone receiving a job. Maybe some of you are receiving a job and it's something that you've been waiting for, and maybe it's not something that you applied for, but someone physically reached out to you, sent you an email, sent you a message, sent you a letter, saw your resume on Indeed or something, or LinkedIn, or even might have saw your Instagram and your Facebook and your business, and has a offer that they want to provide to you, or even an opportunity that they'd like to provide to you. And it's like something that you didn't necessarily even ask for because you weren't looking for it, but it's something that just kind of found you, you know, as it should have. So that's the vibe that I'm getting from that card. I think for this month, the chakras to work on for you guys would be the solar plexus. Anything surrounding money, wealth, finances, you know, anything like that will be heavily supported by your solar plexus if you put your energy into that area this month. Not only that, it'll allow you to be more enigmatic when it comes to attracting things to you. So really making sure that that solar plexus is on point. I also seeing the solar plexus working heavily with the throat chakra. So if you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, someone who is in a field where you're having to talk to people and make deals often, working on the solar plexus will be very beneficial for you, because in terms of it working hand in hand with the throat chakra, having that strength and that certainty in your voice, in your knowledge when it comes to whatever you're selling or whatever you're trying to make a deal on, is going to be super important this month. And so it's like, it reminds me of an episode of Shark Tank where I feel like those judges just beat people up, I swear. So I just, but anyways, it's like an episode of Shark Tank. You know, you go on Shark Tank and you get up on stage and you start talking and you sound like you have a really good pitch, but then all these people start asking you questions and you start to fumble over your words and you're not sure what to say, and maybe you forgot a certain number statistic or whatever that was on your business plan, or you know, how many numbers you wish to do for this month, or whatever the case is, or what numbers you wish to do or intend to do, whatever the case might be. But yeah, I don't know, it reminds me of that, where you kind of come into the situation feeling confident, you've said your script, but now that all these people are asking you questions kind of out of script, it's like, oh, you're being tripped up on your words, you're kind of uncertain, you're not really certain about the numbers, etc., that you are maybe speaking on, and that is not going to be beneficial for you this month. So if you are trying to make a deal, if you are wanting to connect with someone to make a deal, if you're working in a business where you often have to, you know, apply for things, or, you know, applying for grants or anything like that, having complete certainty and knowledge of what you're doing, how you're doing it, what you need, what resources you need, etc. will be super important. So making sure that you've kind of rehearsed those scripts and brought that knowledge in, so that you are, or to make sure that you are knowledgeable for when you are provided these situations where you have to explain why you deserve whatever it is that you are selling, you know, why you deserve to have a new customer, why you deserve to make the sale, why you deserve to receive this grant, why you deserve to make this deal with this other company, whatever it is. But making sure that your script is good and making sure that you are confident in it and having that whole 100% confidence in it. Aside from that, working on your sacral chakra as well this month, I think, will be really important and beneficial too. So allow yourself to dive into those sacral waters and see what they've got for you. But also be open to helping hands that might come forward this month for you. You might be in the receiving position and not necessarily the giving position, or you could be in both, so just to be aware of that. The card that came up for you, we've got 2 of them, and this is from the Oracle of the 7 Energy stack. The first card is Tender Embrace. And the second card is Close Encounters. So those are the 2 oracle cards that we've got, and I will post the book images for those on the group, just so that you know. And I'm going to pull one more card from the Santa Muerte deck and see what that has to say. Queen of Swords. So Queen of Swords is actually a very kind of Aquarius card because it's an air card, air sign element, and group of the deck, I suppose. Also Spades is a air element too, so. But yeah, interestingly enough, we have all of these yellow flowers. We have this big yellow background. She's got yellow flowers for earrings, and part of her dress is yellow. So the sword that you need to wield this month is definitely, absolutely your solar plexus. Working on that as if you were working on a muscle. And it's like, you know, we also have to remember that we might look mighty weird if we only work out our arms and our abs and never work on our legs, and then we might have this big beefy muscle situation happening on top, and then we have these spindly little legs that it's like, it looks like we might topple over. And the chakras are very much similar, where we have to make sure that we are putting energy into each and every one of them, and working them like muscles. And so when you're working with the solar plexus this month, or just like honing in on it, refining the energy there, I would suggest working on the other chakras surrounding, so sacral chakra and throat chakra, even though it's, you know, one removed from being right next to the solar plexus. But working with all of them, because all of them can bring balance for one chakra, and, you know, sometimes working with one chakra can throw others out of balance because one is receiving all the energy. So while you're working with this one, make sure you are working with the others as well. So that is for you guys, my little people that chose this one. And here are the cards one more time. Close Encounters. Finally freeing yourself from this chain or cage of attachments and maybe belief systems, belief styles, and ways of thinking that you might have invested in the past. And then also making these long-lasting connections with people that really do support you and that believe in your purpose and what you're doing and want to see you do well. But also they know that by sharing that energy with you, it also reciprocates a similar energy to them. And so they also have the opportunity to do well and live well. And then our last two cards again, Six of Pentacles and the Queen of Swords. All right, and so for my party people that chose this rune here, we are getting to you next. So go ahead, think of your question. So switch out the stones here and do a little shuffle. If you have anything specific in mind that you're feeling, thinking, etc., you know, definitely dive into that. And let's see, I think I'm going to switch it up a little bit and pull a card from this deck instead first. So this is the Santa Marte Book of the Dead deck. I believe that's what it's called. And for you guys, we have Nine of Swords. And so, interestingly enough, I'm going to go back and look at the meanings I had written down for this rune specifically, because I feel like this might go along with. So, Lot of Cup, Vagina, feminine mysteries, secrets, occult abilities, and initiation. So for some of you, I feel like maybe you are kind of overthinking this whole process of whatever it is you might be flowing through. And as you can see, we have another Spades vibe here. So another airy energy. And this one specifically is always kind of like, it reminds me of thoughts being everywhere and jumbled and a lot of uncertainty, etc. But it's funny because within these thoughts and this uncertainty, etc., there's this interesting kind of organization that's happening here. And it kind of reminds me of The Matrix. And if you guys have never seen the documentary A Glitch in the A Glitch in the Matrix, geez, that was a glitch in the Matrix within and of itself, I'm telling you. But if you've never seen that documentary, it's very interesting. Specifically, there's a kid in this documentary, and this might be a little bit morbid, but he had watched The Matrix, and it was like his favorite movie. He had gotten a trench coat and everything. He was all about it. He was all in. And he got into this area in his mind where he was like, well, all of this is a simulation. I realize that, you know, all of this is a matrix. I realize that. And I apologize if you guys can hear the lawnmowers. I can't stop others from mowing their lawn. But yeah, he's like, you know, I realize this is a simulation. I realize what's going on here. And so, you know, if all of this is a simulation, then why does any of it even matter anyway in the first place? And so I think one day he watched The Matrix for a final time, and I think he might have called someone on the phone and said like the final line from The Matrix, whatever that line is. And then he hung up and he put on his trench coat and he went downstairs, and his parents were like, his dad was on his computer or something, his mom was like sewing or making something from yarn or whatever the case was. And he walked down there, he just stared at his mom, and he had a gun in his hand. And she was like, what are you doing? Like, you wouldn't do this, what's going on? And he shot her. And then he walked over to his dad and looked at him eye level, who his dad was under the desk at this point, and he shot him point blank in the face. And then afterwards, his sister had called him, and she was like, hey, I want to talk to our parents. I guess she was on the phone with her dad as this happened, and he just hung up on her. And he ended up calling the police on himself immediately afterwards. But it's just a very wild situation. It's like, it reminds me of someone who gets so caught up in this idea that it's like it causes problems for them mentally, to the point where they've created this whole reality for themselves, you know, in the meantime. And so this might be something to be aware of too. What are you telling yourself most often? What food are you fueling yourself with? I forget, what was this? It said Lot of Cup. And it kind of like that Lot of Cup reminds me of like, what are you filling your cup with? What energy are you putting into yourself? And also, how are you allowing yourself and your thoughts to kind of become like this spaghetti of ideas and feelings and things that you're feeling uncertainty about? And it's really allowing yourself to hash all of that out this month especially. And I think this again is going to be connected to the solar plexus, which I feel like that came up last month too. So we're continuing to do the work, and I feel like it makes sense because of the time of season that we're in. I notice that summer is a really good time, or even spring a really good time for solar plexus work, not only because the sun is out, but just because of the energy. It's just this whole vibe of spring and summer brings this really beautiful regenerative energy to our bodies, to our cells, to our chakras. So flowing through that this month, but releasing yourself from this maybe thought matrix that you've created in your mind, where you've become so sold on this idea just because of what you allow yourself to become influenced by, and it's maybe not even a healthy idea. It kind of reminds me of someone who's been brainwashed in some way. They just they learn this one thing and then they go down this whole separate other spiral that wasn't really supposed to be related to the one that they first connected with. And it's like they kind of confuse themselves to the point where, I don't know, maybe they are kind of even being confused by who they are, what they're doing, and where they place themselves in this world. Maybe their physical existence feels like an anomaly, in a sense of alienation, which is interesting because it kind of goes back to that other rune. But yeah, I feel like there might be even things within yourselves that need to be uncovered this month. It reminds me of think of yourself as this dusty old book that you have read a few times, and you're like, I've read this book enough times to feel like I know the story by heart, so I'm just gonna put it on the shelf or put it into my attic and forget about it. And I think you're being encouraged to pick up this book again, dust it off, and reread that story. And it might even be different. It might not even be what you remember. There may be parts in the story that you're like, wow, I don't really remember reading that, or that seems different from how I remember it. Like, I built this whole story in my mind, and now that I'm reading it again, it's like, oh, maybe this element of remembering who you are and not who society has made you, and the thoughts that they've put in your head about who you should be and what you should be doing and how you should be doing it. It's like coming back home to yourself, rereading that autobiography that you know is spiritually within your Akashic library, and know that you can access it. You don't have to be certified to access your Akashic records. You don't have to do anything crazy or jump off a wall and spin around 3 times and knock on the door twice. Like, I promise you, anything that people get certified or initiated for, you know, obviously they are learning things to help them do whatever they're doing. But in a lot of cases, you don't need that. You don't need the certification. You don't need the initiation. You don't need to travel to Mexico to do ayahuasca, to study with a shaman in Peru. You don't need to do all those things. You have all the resources right here. In a lot of cases, it's your guides that are willing to teach you. And so while you are looking at everyone else's book, why don't you pull your book out of the attic and look at your own? It has the blueprint to your magic in there. It has the blueprint to your generational health and even downfalls. It has the blueprints. So walk into your attic in your mind, into your Akashic records, into the Akashic records and the ethers, and pull out that information. And know that it might not always feel and be like a visualization of you physically looking through all these books and finally pulling out a book and, you know, being able to read it. For some reason, connecting with that Akashic record will be like going through the school of nature, where the teacher is here, or the tree is here to teach you who you are. These flowers are here to teach you what your mind is made of, the thoughts your mind is made of, and the thoughts that you need to reframe. The soil is here to teach you where you've been lacking in allowing yourself to be grounded. My camera stopped because it stops at 30 minutes, but continually forgetting yourself. How can you allow yourself to rewrite that story and flip to that page that might feel like a little bit of a red flag and you don't really want to visit it, and maybe there's some trauma there, but that page that page in your story is important right now. So you need to flip that book open and take a peek. The next card for you guys is the death card. There definitely has to be a death, a ending, a release, a letting go. There has to be something taking place here. And it is time. It is finally time. And I think it's funny because, like, if you think of this image here, or look at this image here, I'm trying to prop up the cards. But if you take a peek at this image here, you can see that this little girl is holding a little red flower, which reminds me of this little red bookmarker here. And that tells me that there is some strong importance in whatever that little thing is, that little memory, that little thought, that little idea, that page that you maybe don't even want to visit. It's going to be important. You have to flip open that book. This also kind of reminds me of that. If you think of these two distant towers back here as the binding of a book, and the sun in the middle as the little bookmark that we see on this one here. And I feel like that is really going to be, again, where you find your confidence, where some things are exposed, where you learn more about yourself, etc. And I think the big message from this card too is this is the death card, okay? And this card specifically, we see this person depicted down here who has already been trampled by death, and death has already taken them. This woman, she knows what's coming and she's not vibing with it, but she's just like, ugh, I'm just gonna look the other way, just do what you gotta do. This lady is like, you know what, I've been waiting for this for some years now. I've known it's been coming, and I've come to peace with it, so whenever you're ready to take me, go ahead. This little girl, she doesn't know what death is. She just thinks this is some stranger riding in on their horse, and all she wants to do is show a little love towards them, you know, give them a little gift of a flower. And so there's that kind of innocence of death and not knowing what it is and what your relationship is to it. But with all of these people, and the overall message here is that whether you are this person who tried to fight death and couldn't, or whether you are this person who has known it was coming for a long time and now you're finally ready, or even if you are this person who's like, you know what, I don't know who you are, I just want to give you a flower and show you some love, or whether you're this person, I know it's coming, whatever, I'm just going to turn my head and hope for the best. But either way, the overall idea is that there needs to be this general kind of acceptance of the fact that this exists, you know, this exists, death exists, moments like this exist, and even though we try to escape it, we can't. So it's better to either show up this way, or even this way, than to be like this person who tried to run away from it and, you know, couldn't. But I don't think this, you know, this isn't a physical death. And for some of you, maybe you might have lost someone recently, and there might be something tied to that you need to pay attention to, in a way where you need not get yourself trapped or entrapped in this mental cycle, just because of this occurrence. Otherwise, I think it might be a ego death. A death of your old self, a death of, not your old self maybe, but a death of this version of yourself that you've created over time that, you know, is so far, the story of that person is so far from the original story of who you are and who you will be, that it just kind of got misconstrued in some ways. So again, going back into that book of who you are, rediscovering those parts of yourself, and hashing all of that out. But I feel like with this boat here, I feel like once you really allow yourself to go through this ego death, go through this releasing period, and really allow yourself to go and move through that, I feel like there will be an opportunity that will present itself out of all of this darkness to show you something important. So pay attention to your solar plexus, and even pay attention to the protection that you keep around you. I often register this black color as like protection, a aura of protection. So even this month your aura might be more of a black color, which is not a bad thing. It just might mean that you are heavily in a protection mode. And I feel like for some of you that might not be very conducive or productive to what you're doing and where you're moving in your life. And so I think it might be a good idea to kind of lower those defenses and to allow yourself to bring some of that sunlight in. It reminds me of a dark room where the blinds have been pulled and the curtains have been pulled, and you know, it's just dark and you can kind of barely see a little bit of light visible, but not a whole lot. So allow yourself to pull those curtains, let the sun shine in, let the sunlight shine. If you haven't heard that song, definitely check it out. This card here, Beyond the Ordinary. And this, again, might feel like your energy. I feel like there's just like this tapping in that needs to happen. Again, this coming home to yourself. There is no one else in this card, you know, besides this one person. This card only has one person. This card has multiple people, but I feel like there's still a focus on self. So allow yourself to focus on self. Go beyond the ordinary. Go beyond the limitations of whatever society has told you you have to be, or even the thoughts that they've put in your head that allowed you to become so far apart from this person that you used to be that you kind of created this, I don't know, shell of a person of who you think you are, but that's not who you are. And so I think diving within and kind of uncovering what is beneath that shell, this reminds me of something that's kind of opened up. It, like this image, if this were like my fist, I might have seen it like this. And then after time, over time, after they've learned and grown and whatever the case might have been, I see it kind of being like this, where the card just expands and there's like this explosion of authenticity, of kind of finally knowing and recognizing that this is who you are, whoever you are. So go beyond the ordinary and dive into this version of yourself that has galaxies within you. You can clearly see the difference here. This to me is like evolution. You know, this feels like very stagnant, stale, almost kind of Capricorn sort of energy, where it's just like, not that Capricorns are stagnant and stale, but they're ruled by Saturn, which is a very kind of like serious planet, very structural planet. And then kind of bursting out of like this matrix of like feeling like everything has to be, I don't know, everything has to be geometrically symmetrical and formed and combined, etc. It's instead realizing like there doesn't have to be this very boring structure. Instead, you can still have a beautiful Fibonacci looking sequence, but be artistic and bold and beautiful and colorful about it. You know, you don't have to be drab and super sticking to the morals and super sticking to the structures. You can expand and grow and do something artistic and find structure within that. So allow yourself to be inspired this month, guys. I just feel like you guys need like a pep talk or something, or like a hug, or you need something. You need some fun in your life, and bring some fun into your life, man. Just do it. Go do something fun. You know, forget all the structural stuff. That will always be there. But how often do you really allow yourself to have some fun? Some cool, genuine fun. So that is what I've got for you, group number 2. Let us move on forward to group number 3. Alright friends, our third and final rune here, Fehu, if I'm saying that correctly. And just for a reminder, wealth/cattle, abundance, luck, energy, foresight, fertility, creation. The reverse of this would be failure, greed, atrophy, discord, cowardice, stupidity, dullness, poverty, and bondage. So, let's kind of do this situation here that I was feeling for the last reading. This is where you're at now, where your energy is at now. Sorry about the ring light reflection. This is the advice. And then this is where your energy is going and what you're being encouraged, how you're being encouraged to level up this month. Sacred reverence. So, in looking at these 3 cards, I feel like for you, group number 3, your most important energetic takeaway for like where your energy is at right now is that you could use some balance within your throat chakra, as well as some balance within your root chakra possibly. You could kind of register that as like a heart chakra energy as well. But I'm more so feeling like this element of allowing yourself to be grounded. And it's interesting because if we think of the throat chakra, that's a very airy energy. It's associated with the air zodiac and air signs. And then if you think of the earth here, you know, that's obviously earth signs. And so I find that to be an interesting contrast because air can be very, I don't know, airy, very floaty, flighty, all over the place, talkative, and generally some earth signs could be the same way, but for the most part I see earth as more like chill, calm down, more like a kapha energy, just kind of vibing out, chilling out, enjoys warm, hearty food, etc. Whereas, I don't know, Vata would be the same thing. The air element would be kind of similar. They're similar in the way that they both need warm, nourishing, and kind of grounding in some ways. Even though Kapha is a very grounded sign, it still needs to be grounded. Otherwise, there can be some anxiety. So, but there's this balance that's needing to take place here, and maybe even like the balance between the two, knowing when it's time to step into that airy version of yourself and knowing when it's time to slow down, ground down, and be a little bit more slower maybe with your movements. It kind of reminds me of maybe a snail and like a gecko. The air sign being more like a gecko, the snail being more like the earth here. The snail obviously moves a bit slower, but it's like this long, this sustaining, burning energy, whereas the gecko might be all over the place, and they also they run out of energy very often, and so they often have to find ways to replenish themselves. I don't really know if that's the true anatomy of those animals, but that's like the archetype or the metaphor that's coming to mind, at least. But there needs to be this balance between you. You need to know when to go rabbit and when to go turtle. On those, I don't know because I've never used one myself, but the little carts in Walmart where you know, they help assist those that need them, those that are pregnant or disabled or whatever the case might be, injured, assists them in getting around the store. And full rabbit mode might be, you know, the full throttle, and then turtle mode might be the slowest mode. And it's knowing when to use both. You can't be full throttle all the time and then continuously running out of energy and never replenishing yourself. It reminds me of someone on a plant-based diet where you are just eating veggies, and lots of raw foods and salads and things, but you aren't really indulging in any heartier foods, like maybe some quinoa or other forms of healthy grains or even beans and legumes. And it's realizing that a lot of your fuel, it will come from those greens and things in those moments, but also you digest those very, very quickly. And in order to have that long sustained energy that you're looking for, you would have to incorporate those heartier foods that you know, give your energy that, or give your body that boost of energy, whether that be beans or legumes, or maybe including some rice, some whole grains, some quinoa, whatever the case might be. So allowing yourself to kind of come up with what that balance looks like for you, so that your energy flows and can reciprocate and can kind of feed into each other. I don't know if I explained it in the beginning or maybe one of the previous readings for this whole video, but I was talking about how, you know, when you're working on your muscles, for example, when people work on their chakras or start first learning about them, people are very much like, oh, third eye, and that's all they care about is their damn third eye. And it's like, okay, well, your third eye is cute and everything, but honey, if you don't have your solar plexus together, you're not going to have any clarity within that third eye, because it's just going to be like, if you're on a walkie-talkie and you're on the wrong station, you might hear your neighbor trying to yell at her son as well as whoever you're trying to talk to. And then when you're all talking, it's like, now you're all talking to each other, and then there's this noise, and now you're way off topic and everything else. So making sure that frequency is honed in so that through all of the channels you're able to receive the messages. It's also kind of like working out. That's the example I was using, where someone goes to the gym and they only focus on their legs, and now they have these huge, bulky legs, and now the upper part of their body, you know, they never worked it out, so they have these arms that are really thin, and, you know, it just kind of looks very disproportionate. You can always tell when someone works out one part of their body more than the other, and that's why they tell you to always make sure that you are spending an equal amount of time on everything. It's like just in yoga, where if you do one side, you have to do the next one. So when we think of this in terms of our chakras and chakra energy and what we're working on, we have to remember that, yeah, throat chakra is really asking for our attention this month, but so is the root chakra. And what they're asking us is to not get so involved within them that we forget about every other chakra that exists. What they're asking is that we focus on them, but we also pay attention to the other chakras that need our assistance, whether that might be the sacral chakra or, you know, the solar plexus. So allowing yourself to find balance in all the ways and not spend too much time on one thing and not enough time on another thing, because you might find yourself out of balance and kind of creating more work for yourself in the way of trying to compensate. So this also kind of has to do with your wealth as well, knowing how to balance your money, knowing how to balance your purchases, not being too gecko-like in your investments, and not being too earth-like in your investments, knowing when to charge. Reminds me of, I'm always like, it reminds me of, but they just give me images. It's like a alligator or a crocodile, you know? They're just chilling, sitting on the water, sitting by the side, and then finally they're like, and they snatch up whatever it is. So having that energy. So having that energy where you are being methodical in your attacks, not just like looking for any chance, but you're having that earthy energy where you're able to kind of be there, be present, and watch the surroundings around you. And then when it's time to attack, you know when to do it. So, the advice. Let go of all those thoughts that are happening in your head, all those external conversations and opinions that people have about what you're doing and what it is that you're meant to do, etc. Everyone is going to have their own concept, idea, etc. of what they think you should be doing, they think you should be investing in. But that is their thoughts based off of their own experience, and their experience is not your own. And your goals are not their goals. So having to remember that within this gaining of wealth and balancing of your finances and things, paying attention to the people who are trying to talk to you about these things as well. You know, if someone is trying to tell you about how to handle your finances, but they don't they don't do that for themselves, it might be more of a crab in a bucket mentality than anything, because they are wanting to throw you off by giving you their advice, even though they aren't really qualified to speak on what it is that they are giving advice on. One, they're not a financial advisor, but also two, they've been in this position where they, you know, it might be one of those family members where whenever they end up getting a large sum of money or whatever the case is, they automatically end up spending it all. And it's like, you recognize that that's how they are, and their advice might be kind of attached to that thought, where it's like, oh, you just got your stimulus, well, you better go out and spend that. You never know when you'll have another chance to spend some money like that. And it's like, you have to remind yourself to, if you are wanting to rewrite these stories, even within your generational and family line, you have to consider where the growth is, and where you are also being tested. In some cases, where a family member might say something of that nature to you, that might be more of like a test and more of like a reminder, like, oh, yeah, I remember hearing this when I was a kid. I remember what my parents did and how they reacted to different things and situations and scenarios, etc. So let me act differently. Let me do different this time. And so recognizing when those stories present themselves and allowing yourself to rewrite those. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Kind of facing on this this energy, this thought bubble, this kind of like this generational shadow that might have followed you through, like I said, generations, and you finally recognize what the shadow is, whereas maybe other people in generations before you hadn't. And so now recognizing where their thoughts are keeping them tripped up, maybe helping them retrain those thoughts in subtle ways, but more than anything, allowing yourself to provide that energy for yourself to create healing through your thoughts. And the last and final card, Sacred Reference. So, the way that I kind of feel the vibe of this card is, I feel like maybe even within your mother or maternal line, this idea of wealth and things might be very prominent for you. And for the friend that I kind of brought up, I don't know if I brought up, I'm like getting all the sections of the readings confused, but if I didn't bring it up in this one, you know, where there's this energy or this idea of, well, I don't know when I will have it again, so let me just spend it all. And that might be a concept that you might have learned or came up with within your maternal line. For this friend specifically that I used as an example, that was her case. You know, her mother's family, a lot of her sisters were that same way, and that was just kind of what they knew. And her herself, she realized it, but she didn't realize it in a way where she was retraining that thought. She was just playing into it and doing what they've done. But instead, you might have this energy of kind of sacred reverence, of coming into this conclusion, or coming into this feeling where you are able to have reverence for those that may think differently, but also recognizing where you need to retrain those thoughts and retrain the things happening within you, and even recognizing how they might be, or how they might have been passed along to you through your family line, maternal line, which might be key. So even as you work with yourself, maybe even possibly even working with your mother or people in your maternal line and helping them reshape their ideas around money and reform those ideas around money as well. But since we have the earth so heavy in this card of Sacred Reference, I feel like your root chakra, it's funny because it's like this equal duality. Your root chakra is going to be equally as important as your throat chakra this month. So I would spend a lot of time on those, and even spend some time with air. You know, work with the air element as well as work with the earth element. With the clouds and the stars, that's very air. And then we have these hands that are earth. So maybe allow yourself to bring wealth into your life, into your energy, by working with your hands, working with the earth's energy, as well as working with air energy. I know in previous maybe readings I spoke about different forms of air magic. You could go back to those if you wish, or if you have listened to this reading and you'd like me to write them out so that you all can kind of save them, send me a message or drop a comment. I do check those when I receive them. Sometimes I don't always get notified though, so bear with me if I don't see it right away, because I don't know why Patreon doesn't like notify me as well as they could. But anyways, yeah, one good way of maybe combining the two is to possibly write your intention on a leaf and put it in a little pouch or something and hang it on a branch of a tree, and you could hang it there for the day if it won't rain. If it rains, I guess it would be okay. I don't know how that would go for the items within the bag, but you could do it. Even with a mesh bag, that would be cool. But hang it on the tree, allow it to get some air energy, and then if you want to, you could put it in a box or in a jar and bury it in the earth. And so then your intentions have both air energy and earth energy. You could do the same with your crystals as well, as far as cleansing them and recharging them. So that might be something to work with for you guys, as far as incorporating both of those elements. And even within your magic, again, incorporating both of those elements, incorporating the air element and the earth element. If you in your birth chart have a lot of heavy earth and air, maybe checking out those spots and places in your chart that are ruled by air and earth, and seeing what houses they are in, what their relationships to other planets might be, etc. So that might be a nice little fun project for you to do some research on if you're looking for something to do in your free time this month. Check out your birth chart and also try some magic that has to do with working with the elements outdoors, working with the weather even, and incorporating more of that into your practice.